good morning, everybody. My name is Amol Nirgudkar. I'm the CEO of Patient Prism, and I'm delighted to welcome my good friend Steve Bilt onto the program today. Steve, I've been a big fan of yours for a very long time. All of us in this industry look up to what you've done personally and professionally at Smile Brands to really elevate what dentistry is and can do in our society to make smiles for everyone, right? Steve Bilt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amol. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And Steve, for those you don't know him, and then our show goes to many, many people around the country. He is the CEO and founder of Smile Brands. It's a dental support organization that supports over 400 offices across the country. He also serves as the chairman of the Smiles for Everyone Foundation, and it's a not-for-profit that believes in delivering smiles to everyone around the world who cannot afford it. Steve's got the three incredibles in my view as qualities. You know, he's an incredible husband and a dad. I think that's his number one thing. He's an incredible human being, and he's an incredible business leader. And I have known him. He's been a great friend and mentor to me for the time I have known him, for the time we've spent together. It's always been, I've learned something from it. First and foremost, before I even let you talk, saw you on CNBC, saw you on USA Today, number 6 in the country when it comes to top CEOs for diversity. You're in the same league as Tim Cook and the guys from Google, Apple, and everybody else. I was so proud for me to see this. I even showed it to my kids. I'm like, man, I know this guy, and he is number 6. So congratulations for that. I know a very famous man now, which is very nice. Under this year, Steve's leadership, Smile Brands has achieved top 25 companies for professional development, top 25 companies for women, as well as top 25 companies for leadership teams. And you continue to win these accolades and Smile Brands through the craziest times that we've been living in. So congratulations again.
Thank you, Amol. I appreciate it.
So I'm gonna start my interview right off the bat. You know, obviously we're in this pandemic. The coronavirus hit us completely without a warning, and as business leaders, we think about planning for contingencies, and we've never planned for a pandemic before because we never thought it would happen.
Right.
And one of the big things that I've been noticing with Smile Brands is you guys never really shut down, right? You kept going, and you really evangelized the message of that dentistry is essential. We need to keep patients out of the ER, and you really were forceful in that message because it was an important message for our society and our lawmakers to understand too. Now, the question number one is, we're going through another phase. It seems like maybe it's the same first phase, and we're seeing cases rise all across the country, and a lot of dentists are scared that how do we handle this new surge as a dental office, whether you're a DSO or the independent dentist. What kind of mindset they need to be as they prepare for this August, September surge potentially in dentistry?
Yeah. Well, you know, Amol, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, so it's kind of fun to keep building it out. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned and that I really want to pass on to everyone, and I say pass on to everyone because it also is passing it back to myself. And I've talked about Viktor Frankl's concept of tragic optimism before. And I was just on a company-wide webinar yesterday reminding my team of tragic optimism. And I said to them, I know for a fact you've fallen into this trap. And I said, do you want to know how I know? I said, because I've been leading the conversation about tragic optimism, and I fell into it. And so the first thing I want to remind people is you have to have an unwavering faith that you'll get through this. But you have to be very, very careful not to set a deadline in your mind, because that's how you'll break your heart and your spirit. And so what does that mean? It means that, are we in phase 1? Are we in phase 2? Is it almost over? Don't entertain it. Don't even think about it. Just think about you'll get through it, and then think about how you keep your tank full, your energy level high, And so one of the things that I did early on, and I really asked people to find their own mechanism, or use this one, candidly, but it's like, I had to take the pressure off myself as a leader, because anyone who's working with or for you can feel your own confidence or lack of confidence or pressure or exhaustion. And so one thing I did is I said, look, I'm going to make decisions in 24-hour cycles. And that means that what I'm saying today, I'm going to stand by hopefully for 24 hours. And by tomorrow, the world may change enough that I have to do something different or suggest something different. We have to figure something else out. And so the power of that was taking the pressure off myself and, by extension, my team, to say, you don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to know where this is all going, because, by the way, it's unknowable anyway. But don't waste your energy trying to think you have to know. Just say, what do I need to do right now for the next day? And so that was designed to take pressure off ourselves. And I will tell you, I said that probably in the second or third day of the pandemic, because I was feeling the pressure to lead people, to the other side. And my God, I don't know what the other side looked like, right? You think about the metaphor of Moses leading the Israelites through the desert for 40 years. He had no idea where he was going. That wasn't up to him. He just had to keep moving, right? And so that was the idea, is let's just make sure we keep moving. We don't have to know the destination. And I bring that up because I brought that exact thing up to my team earlier this week in our daily meeting. I said, guys, just remember, we're back to 24-hour cycles again. We're going to make the best decision we can make right now for this very discrete period of time. We'll figure out tomorrow, because we can't know. And so that's one thing I'd say is really important, is take the pressure off yourself, communicate how you're handling it. Don't keep it all in your head. Some of us as leaders, particularly us male leaders, tend to keep it in our head, and just like work it in here and then we want to unveil it when it's perfect. Well, by the time you unveil it in this world, it's obsolete. So that's something I would really encourage people to do. And don't be shy about revisiting the same lessons again, because if you had to learn them at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm pretty sure you got to learn them again now.
I mean, there's almost this fatigue that we've had. And I think maybe that fatigue leads us into that tragic optimism cycle, because we're like, we want to be done with this. And now it's coming back. And now we don't want to go through it again. So there's that fear too.
And we're also getting some outside inputs that might be driving decision-making for us that's different than what we'd make without it. So we're hearing things in the press. We're reading things internationally. We're reading about, it's under control in Florida. Florida is an example of how great it was handled. Well, not so much today. California, wow, what a miracle. Now, not so much a miracle. New York, what a disaster. Well, maybe not such a disaster. But then there's also things that are working on our incentive systems and the incentive systems of our constituents that we don't even think about necessarily, because they're environmental. And normally we don't think about environmental concerns per se, because we want to deal with what we can control. But, what's happening with your staff and their willingness and excitement to come back to work while unemployment benefits are tripled? That's probably impacting them. And that's not good or bad, but it's something to know. What about you and your appetite for bringing them back to work and saying, wow, revenue's going great. It's all the way up to 70%. And I took a PPP loan, and in order to get that forgiven, I got to bring back my entire staff. So I'm going to bring back my whole staff because revenue is soaring. Well, is it soaring to 70% or is it soaring to 100%? Well, if it's soaring to 70% and you've brought back 100% of your staff, you're probably going to have a different P&L,
right?
Pretty soon.
Right.
That's not good or bad, but it's something to know, because you're being impacted by the environment differently. I mean, if you drove to work every day, like most of us did back when there used to be this thing called an office you'd go to, right? If you're a corporate executive, you drive to the office, you don't think about the roads. You don't think like, wow, the roads are here. They're great. You just take them for granted, right? And you bought a car that worked well on those roads. Well, if those roads didn't exist, the car you bought or the motorcycle you'd ride in or whatever would look very different. And we're kind of in a world where infrastructure, basic assumptions have changed a lot, and they're impacting our decision-making when we might not know it. So I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's powerful to step back and go, what is changing and how is it impacting my decision-making? Because then you have the power over it, right? It's now a choice. It's a conscious choice, not a subconscious choice, which I think will lead to quicker recognition if something's changing in a bad way for you.
It makes so much sense. I mean, one of the practical things that you do with your team every day, and I know that because I know everybody at Smile Brands, is you start everything with celebrating something, and this is a practical suggestion as you're thinking about your staff meetings, your
Yes.
team meetings with your people. You start the conversation with what can we celebrate today? Tell us what that does to the team spirit as soon as we start a meeting.
So we have a concept that's called Celebrate Everyday Miracles. And the idea is it means you can celebrate every day, you can celebrate miracles, you can celebrate everyday miracles, which could be little things, right? Little things or big things. And so every time we have a meeting every day with my leadership team. And then even when I do meetings with our field teams and any meeting I'm starting these days, we just say, who's got a miracle to share? And we'll spend somewhere between 3 minutes and 15 minutes, could be longer sometimes, going through the miracles of the day. And, number one, it reminds you what's going right. And one of the things that you know well, Amol, as an entrepreneur, is that the best place to make a successful business is to realize what's going well and do more of it. Human nature sometimes has you say, what's going wrong, and let me stop it. But your best opportunities are doing more of what you're doing well, right? So Celebrate Everyday Miracles, for one thing, just reminds you what you're doing well so you can do more of it. That's one. But probably more importantly, it's setting the mental model of the team to see miracles and to see what's going well. Because again, we as leaders, we're trained to solve problems. Matter of fact, most people, if you were interviewing someone, you say, what do you do best, lead? Well, I'm a problem solver. It's like, okay, that's a good trait, but that means you're trained to see problems. Well, if you're trained to see problems, think about you as a parent, right? You as a parent, you look for what your kids do best, and then you help manage away from what they don't do as well. But if you spend all your time seeing what they do poorly, they're going to say, okay, I know what it is. I do these things poorly. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at this. You don't really want your kids to be experts in what they're bad at. You want them to be experts in what they're good at. Same thing with an organization. So we're trying to set the psychology to be experts in what we're good at and remind people a lot more is going well than is going poorly. As we know, if you saw 10 patients and you had one complaint, you'd just be like, oh, this is horrible. I'm so frustrated. You would forget about the 9 that you did really well with. And in our case, we probably see 98% that are pretty darn happy and 2% or 1% sometimes that aren't. Well, if we really want to spend all our time focusing on those folks, so I think it's really important to set the psychology of your organization to focus on what you do well, just like you would with your family.
And this leads me into this next topic, which is something that I have been passionate about. And you were the first person in our industry to actually be a forceful proponent of it, the Safe Smile Space initiative, or the platform that you launched in July. When I saw that first time, and when you had sent me a message too, Amol, we got to get really behind this. And you took as a leader in this industry, you took a stance on building a community around infection control, inclusivity, tolerance, and civil discourse. And given what's going on with in the society today, we as Americans who are so proud of our nation and our Constitution and our freedoms, and we believe that we're the most perfect democracy out there, we need to do more to take a stand. So talk to us a little bit about this Safe Smile Space platform that you've launched, that everybody's like, oh my God, we got to have this in our organization too.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's the case. And that's why we put it out there for number one, is to share it, to say, let's all build together and get better and better at this. Because that's, to me, that's what makes our country have the potential it has to be truly great. And I've often heard it said democracy is the worst form of government except for everything else we've ever tried, right? So, to expect a perfect union is not realistic. To expect a more perfect union, perhaps, is something that was said long, long ago by far greater minds than mine, right? A more perfect union, not perfect, is more, closer to perfect. So, the idea is, in my way of thinking, I'm going to come back to something in a second around this that I think personalizes it maybe a little more for how people can act. But, our country's biggest problem right now, I don't want to say our biggest problem, one of our biggest problems right now is that we spend all our time, and it kind of goes back to your celebrate everyday miracles question. We're spending all of our time talking about what we stand against. And, you know, Ben Franklin has great quotes on it. You know, it's really easy to talk about what you're against. It's real easy to be the fan up in the stands heckling, you know, the gifted athlete for striking out once or missing a free throw or whatever. It's not so easy when you're on the field and you're facing an opponent who's also well-trained and big and strong and capable. And so, you know, I personally think every time anyone, myself, and I'll put myself, launches a criticism, you ought to check yourself and say, is that what I want to do? Am I the critic, or am I going to talk about what's going well? Am I going to talk about what I'm doing positively? And so when we looked at what was happening in terms of the COVID crisis, followed by the rise, and I don't want to say the new social unrest or the new social, you know, injustice, but the new awareness or the increased awareness of it, we said, what do we want to stand for in this world? Not what we want to stand against. And so we really said, look, we're going to stand for certain things. And I came out really early and I said, you know, I had used, and you know, you've been at my annual leadership meetings, you know how passionate I am about Smiles for Everyone and the wristbands. And when I launched Smiles for Everyone, you know, in 2004, 2005, when we came up with the term and trademarked it, I shared Martin Luther King's speech. You know, because I said, look, this is a dream I have. It's Smiles for Everyone and change the industry and really approach things in this positive way. And I came to my team as soon as this all started to become really aware. I said, guys, I want you to understand, I posted it for our whole company. I said, I want you to be aware, number one, I did use, you know, Dr. King's speech in, you know, whatever it was, '04, to talk about the launch of Smiles for Everyone. I just want to acknowledge, number one, you know, my dream was a lot safer than his dream. Yeah, that's number one. You know, so I want to acknowledge it. Number two, you know, what he was up against is beyond imagination to me, and what some of you struggle with every day, you know, is beyond my comprehension. And so I just want to be aware of that is reality, and it's out there. And does it mean I want to sit back and not do anything? Absolutely not. So you're going to hear me step forward, but don't think for a minute that I'm going to step forward thinking I've walked in your shoes per se, right? So I just an awareness of that. And so we reached out to people and shared that, and then we just said, look, what do we want to stand for? And we just started drafting. And we said, look, dentistry's always been a hard profession. It's always been a tough space. And you've seen, I've posted this online now, you know, but it's harder now with the COVID crisis and the social crisis. So what do we stand for? So we came up with 5 tenets, and we said, these are the things we really stand for. And it is about protecting our people. And it is about protecting our patients. But that includes not making an exception for people who want to have an opinion on what our safety protocols could be, right? If you don't want to follow them, this isn't the place for you. And it's not to say you're a bad person. It just means we have to keep our people safe. And part of it, you know, is very pragmatic, right? You say, you know, one of the big dangers of COVID is viral loading, right? It's how much virus you're exposed to. And so you could have a patient who very reasonably says, I don't really think I need a mask. I'm not worried about it. It's like, you're okay. You might be right. You might be wrong. I'm not here to debate it with you, but my people are here 8 or 10 hours a day, and I have to protect them. So I need you to help me do that. And if you don't want to cooperate with that, then it's okay, but you can't be here. So we really made a stand around that and protecting our people. And then we said, look, socially, we really care about having an open environment and learning and growing. And we really debated words like, are we actively looking for microaggressions, for example? I don't know. That's kind of a lot. You know, I don't want to be monitoring people's social media and running around saying, hey, you said something. But if someone says, you know, I don't like that term, I don't like, you know, this, or I feel like I was treated that way, you know, we really do need to proactively then respond and say, guys, let's learn and grow from this. And so we really made commitments around those things to be open. And if that's the experience you had, I want to hear it. I want to get better. I don't need to defend per se, right? If it's egregious, I do, but I don't have to defend if it was just a, you know, a microaggression that was completely accidental. You know, I mean, look, I've been working for, you know, 30 years. There's terminology that's in our vernacular that's no longer appropriate. I try to avoid it. Sometimes it could happen. If someone points it out to me, I'd say, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And let me grow from it, not defend it, not explain, well, that wasn't meant to be offensive. It's like, well, what does that matter? It did, it was. So we really tried to just say, let's put it out there, what we stand for, but not stop there. Because that shouldn't have been new, right? That shouldn't have been like, whoa, 180-degree turn for our organization. Now suddenly we care about people. Hopefully we've cared about people all along, but we're codifying it so we can, but the only reason to really codify it is to then raise the dialogue around it. So you say, now we can talk about it. Now we can talk about, well, okay, I see what you're saying. That is premise number 4 of the safe smile space. And okay, if that hits you that way, then I need to be better around that. And so it creates this dialogue, this place to have the dialogue. And then we're having listening sessions to say, tell us how we're doing on safety. Tell us how we're doing on, social awareness. Tell us how we are. And so we can get better. And so the idea is to start the journey forward, but not put a stake in the ground as if some policy is going to mean that this stuff doesn't happen in your organization or that you're really good at it. And I hope people can take it as a real positive, not as a defensive, not like, oh, I don't want to get, in trouble. But no, I want a better workplace. I want a workplace where it's more inclusive. I want a workplace where people feel better about coming to work and feel safe. So I think a lot of it has to do with the attitude at the top in terms of what you're really trying to accomplish. And if you're just trying to placate someone by putting out a policy, it's going to blow up in your face. It just will. If you're trying to say, I want to put this out here so we can all have a language to keep getting better, then I think it'll work. And you might say, look, this is the first draft. This is the one I put out. I'm not saying it's permanent. I can't change it. Tell me what doesn't work. As we take it out and road test it, I hope it changes. I hope we continue to grow it. So, one of the things, and I apologize if this wasn't where you're going, but I think part of your question, you got me thinking when you sent when you asked this question originally in preview, you want to talk about this, is what do people do, individuals, right? So here's my company policy. And so how do you go into this in a way that really is authentic? And so our platform's called S3. I have to do everything in 3-word phrases and things like that. So I was thinking about what's the personal goal of this? And this is early. I've never shared this with anybody. So this is debuting in rough draft form with you and me here. So we'll continue to evolve it. But I'm thinking about this concept of P3. So P3. So you got people, power, and platform. So the first thing around this social and inclusion and diversity and all of that is really look at the people on your team as a leader. This is for the leader, right? So who are the people on your team? Like, you want to be inclusive. Who do you have around you right now? Is that a group that is broad and is diverse, or is that a group that is very homogeneous? Well, if it is, then maybe you want to start there and say, how can I keep developing the people in my company so our people in our company become more diverse and more open and more evolved around these social conversations? Then you can ask yourself, so that's really very quantitative. Look across your organization. What do I have, right? The next one is your power, right? So how are you using your power as a leader to shape that? So how are you using your power to shape the inclusiveness of your company? So where are you? How are you proactively using your power to move forward? And then the third one, and this is what I was alluding to earlier about where I think our country has it so backwards, the third one should be your platform, right? How to use your platform to amplify that message around your people and how you're using your power to shape inclusion, right? Our country today, we don't have enough inclusion. I'm going to jump on social media and tell people they should have more inclusion, and then my job's done. It's like, really? That's the third P, not the first P. And so as you kind of got me thinking about it, like, how do I want to approach this? And I'm still toying with it, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Like, don't get out there and amplify until you've looked in the mirror first. And then I think on a lot of levels, we'd be better off.
And I think you've done that, right? I think by putting the stake in the ground with Safe Smile Space, you are now changing the dialogue of an entire platform. You looked at your people, you're very diverse, we know that, right? You've used the power of the platform at Smile Brands to really institute change from the ground up, because you're making it safe and you're giving permission to people to have sometimes difficult conversations around tolerance and diversity and civility and safety. Because once you make it okay, a lot of people don't think they have the permission to even engage in conversations that are difficult. And I think what you're doing with the S3 is enabling an entire platform and your entire ecosystem of 400 plus practices to now be that chamber where these conversations are safe and okay to have. And that's the only way I think we can move forward. So I love the fact, that's the reason why I feel you've done better with culture at Smile Brands, because of this exact thing: people, power, and platform. and that became, and the the conversation just spread like wildfire. Otherwise, just the directive is not going to do it.
The directives do you no good. And in fact, if you're not going to act into them and truly have your heart there and look to change, and right, and the people power platform is meant to be circular, right? Once you went out there and said it, now you better live into it, get better with it, and keep growing. Otherwise, it'll be the same as if you just threw out a directive and didn't do anything with it. But so many times, and I come from some bigger corporations in the day, and been around lots of them, and so many times it's like they just throw out a statement and think that's going to change things, and then the CEO rolls it out once a year as if that's going to really put a stake in the ground. And one of the reasons we have a 3-word mission statement is I want it to be 3 words that everyone has to interpret on their own as to what it means. So smiles, what makes you smile? What makes you happy? Well, what makes you satisfied? What makes you truly smile? And that's for everyone. So you have to subjectively meet that standard. It's not something I can meet for you. So that's the concept there versus, say, a 3-sentence long or 3-paragraph long, as I've seen sometimes, mission statement, where people read it, they go, okay, I think I like that, but I can't remember all of it, obviously. And it could be kind of any company, not necessarily just ours, right? And so, I think that's part of the challenge is you want to put something out that requires you to be proactively involved and your leadership team to be proactively involved in continuing to shape it forward and run your decisions against it. So now say Smile Space, for example, all the decision making we make has to run through that matrix and say, is this increasing us as a safe smile space or decreasing? And if it's decreasing it, we have to stand against it. If it's increasing it, we have to stand for it. So, that really does help, again, create this decision matrix, because there's a million decisions a day going on in the organization, right? And that's the other thing, and you and I have talked about this before, as a leader, I've shared that model. I know it's probably less than perfect model, but, I think we grew up as executives analogizing business leadership to the executive branch, right? So the president's the president, which analogizes, unfortunately, sometimes too closely to a monarchy kind of a metaphor, where it's like, I make the decisions, I'm in charge, right? And really, as a business leader, especially a multi-site healthcare business like ours, right? I'm not there for really any of the decision-making that happens day to day. So what's more important is not so much analogizing to the executive branch, but perhaps the judicial branch, like a Supreme Court justice. And you say, what's important is how I make the decision, the precedent of the decision, so that the people, everyone in the field, the other courts, can follow the precedent. And so, and apply it to their circumstance. And that's really, where things like Safe Smile Space and Smiles for Everyone, you say, there's your precedent. Now figure out how to fit these circumstances into that precedent. Don't think, here's what I would have done, or here's the decision I'd make, because it's probably a different set of circumstances.
No, I agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think it's how do you really institute behavior change amongst lots of people, not by directives, by making them have those conversations themselves, so they arrive at and adhere to the same principles that are out there. Quick pivot to the pandemic and your personal story a little bit is,
Sure.
I've gotten a lot of time myself to think about, I've had a lot of time by myself sitting in my house, in front of the Zoom calls. So you have a lot of time to think about who you are as a person. What have you learned about yourself as a person individually during this time, in this 3 months, that kind of surprised you or give you more clarity about who you are?
That's very interesting to think about. I think there's been a lot of learning, and I think it's probably just the biggest thing is probably that I don't know if it's I want to say learning or a cementing of something. And that's that, we all know, I think, that happiness comes from within, that satisfaction comes from within, that the only real evaluator of our success is ourself. And, this has probably underscored that in a very significant way for me, to where I can say, I really do I've always been able to say that intellectually, but to know that, to have it kind of seep down from the head into the heart, into the gut, I think that's probably the biggest change. It's like, you know what? I do, know, and there's no one else to know, if I'm successful, if I'm happy, if I'm satisfied with what I'm doing. And, that's a powerful change versus reaching outside and saying, hey, somebody validate whether I'm doing the right thing. Somebody tell me if I'm successful. That's the biggest probably, punctuation mark, I'd say, that I've got out of it.
I'll share a quick story about me of what I got out of this. And for the longest
Sure.
time, I got a lot of significance out of driving nice cars. And this pandemic, I had a wonderful car, custom made by BMW, and I was towards the end of the lease. And I said, I am attaching a lot of my significance to this vehicle. So I had this Elon Musk moment where I just returned the car and I said, I'm going to be carless for a little while. And
Wow.
for me, it was a big, it was a conflict for me because I associated so much of my value or worth to that car, and I'm happier. I don't really miss it. I'm okay. And I think that's what it is. I think it's cemented that my happiness really drives from within me and not the stuff that I own, which was a car, right? So that was a little story about that.
Yeah, very similar. No, it's very similar. It's interesting to think about. It's the freedom of being untethered from that, right? Now the car's irrelevant, or the number of likes on a post, or the number of requests you get to do something, or emails, or even financial results of a business, right? It's like, okay, I'm untethered, which does create that's really where freedom comes, right? So, it's a powerful lesson, whatever the attachment was, to break that attachment is, that it's funny that term attachment now sort of bubbles up. And as you well know, that's a very, very meaningful word, when you start to think about spiritual journeys in a very higher plane sense. It's that attachment to things that hold you down, right? But they don't feel like they hold you down because you get positive feedback from them initially anyway. It's interesting.
Question about, I always think about the metaphors you bring up in meetings everywhere. What's the current metaphor of this 24 hours or this month that really is motivating you or inspiring you, that can help our industry as well, right? What's the metaphor?
Yeah, right now, I don't know if it's a pure metaphor as much as a statement, which is really appreciating and enjoying and celebrating and maximizing where we are right now. So we've come out of the canyon in a pretty significant way. We're performing well, but there's no doubt our thinking, it's insidious, was creeping in like, okay, well, we're at this place now. How do we get to here and here and here? And that robs some joy from how far you've come.
Right.
It's also dangerous because if you stop saying I'm going to move and I'm guaranteed to move, and you just say, hold on, I'm where I am. How do I maximize happiness, success, performance right where we are? That's actually a much more safe way to behave right now in the middle of this pandemic. And just say, look, I'm going to set my cost structure. I'm going to set my appreciation. I'm going to set everything based on celebrating and succeeding where we are, and not counting on growth or direction to be successful and to survive. Because, we can be successful at this level. We had, ourselves a spectacular run right now, performance-wise, but it's because we were setting everything to where we are. But it was creeping in at Smile Brands. I'm telling you, we were going like, we're up here, and okay, that means we're headed to here. And that means our cost structure is creeping up with it. Well, if we don't get to there, or even, hopefully not, but dip down a little bit, and as you know, as a CPA, you get a 5% decline on the top and
Right.
a 10% increase in your profit margins, that's not a 10% increase in your cost. That's not a 15% decline in your profit margins. That's a
That's
lot
correct.
more, right?
That's right.
So,
That's right.
so it's dangerous. And so, that seeps in and it gets you. So I think, to answer your question, it's really celebrate the moment, celebrate where we are, and don't put too much stock in trade right now in the fact that it's going to move up. Now, I want to share something though with that, because I had this conversation with my team around that. That concept, if that's novel or if it's something that people aren't doing, it's not because it's 100% right. So why is that? It means something else. There's a poison you have to pick to choose that path. Right? Because if there wasn't a poison on the path, then everyone would be doing it, right? Because we're smart enough as leaders that if it was just 100% the right answer, we'd be doing it. So what's the poison in that path? Well, the poison in that path is that if indeed things are calming down, if indeed demand is coming back, you're going to miss out on some growth by saying I'm celebrating where I am and I'm setting my capabilities and my costs for where I am today. So if you're doing that, you say, okay, am I willing to make that trade-off? And that's sort of the 201 version of that conversation. It's like, okay, if I settle in here, I set my cost structure, I make sure I'm fortified to survive right where we are for a long time if need be.
Right.
I'm going to be late by a day, by a week, by a month. I'm going to be late in capitalizing on the growth opportunity. Okay, I can live with that or I can't. That you have to accept that poison. Otherwise, in that case, you can't stay in the same place because you'll be too busy trying to chase that growth.
I like the framework of this because then decision make becomes easier when you have almost a binary choice between, okay, I'm happy with where I am and I'm sticking this course and I'm willing to give up what might be because I don't know what tomorrow is, but I have made the decision instead of vacillating between, should I do this? Should I do that? Maybe today I do this, tomorrow I do that. And I think the framework gives us a little more clarity on what we should be doing and not get paralyzed by the hysteria that everything has been caused by media, social media, and everything else.
Right. And I think you can take it even one step further and say, okay, if normally I'd be super confident, I'd be doing these 3 things to try to create growth in my business, but now I'm kind of going, maybe I should settle in and appreciate where I am now. Maybe you say, okay, I'm going to do one of those 3 things.
Right.
Because I'm going to be more conservative. Okay, fine. So you do one of those 3 things, and that still means you're taking some risk of not growing as fast, but you're not entirely giving it up either. So it does create another framework or matrix you can run things through. And so you go, okay, I do accept the fact that if I do this, I'm giving something up. And are you willing to give up all 3 of these things, or maybe just 2 of them? And I think it can help you prioritize also. And I think that does help a lot.
And that really brings to my really last question to you is we're in the DSO community and we're pretty close. We talk to each other all the time, but we've got about 80,000, 90,000 independent dentists out there that somehow don't feel as supported. Sometimes they feel on an island today, and I see that pain. And I talk to a lot of them.
Yep.
And they don't have the support structure that you guys do with your meetings. And there is this emotional, there's psychological support that you've given to your organization that sometimes probably is in more than financial support sometimes, because so what are the words of wisdom that you have for an independent dentist today who is on their own, scared a little bit about what's happening, what has happened, and how do they flourish really if they decide to stay independent? Let's just say, how do they flourish for the next 10 years?
So, there's some change afoot that could really be potentially very helpful for independent dentists around this. And that's that keep your eyes peeled. And you're in the inner circle on this, but keep your eyes peeled. We've just made some pretty big changes at the ADSO, which is a great learning organization for DSOs. And we're trying to expand that tent to open it up more broadly to the people you're talking about, to say, look, there's a business of dentistry, and it really helps to have conversations like this to grow as business people. And so we're going to very proactively, we just like an Emmett Scott, the president of the ADSO. You know Emmett well, you're very involved as well. And so we're going to start to really open up a level of membership and a level of opportunity for people to say, let's let you participate in these kind of conversations. And, frankly, it's, the COVID-19 has been the great accelerator, as Emmett likes to say, and to some degree, learning these technologies and these mediums to have these conversations has really created an opportunity to open the tent, to widen the tent, to say, look, let's get you guys in on these conversations so you can learn. And this stuff's valuable. You don't get it, in the 5 hours of training in dental school they do on the business side. But even that's sort of a trite way of confusing. I'm a CPA, I have a master's in business. It doesn't matter. You don't get it unless you're actually running these businesses. And so the reality is to open up the conversation and let folks in is something we're trying to do. So number one, we're going to open up a level of membership at the ADSO side to let the broader groups in, to really, the broader individuals in, to really be part of these conversations. So that's one. Two, the content you're putting out, I'm telling you, it's like you're talking to people like this about these issues. People just have to take the time, and it can be consumed on their time to listen and to learn from this stuff. And I will tell you that this kind of content, tends to be more actionable than just reading the next business book, which is kind of a repackaging of the prior business book, right? And it's not as specific to your sector. So I would say really seek stuff out. The DEO is amazing in that regard too, right? But seek that stuff out and participate in the conversations. And, consume it at the level you're comfortable, but it's a real big opportunity. But I will tell you that it's a long journey. And I think, you have to set out on it like you would any other career path, and don't expect to be able to, go to one ADSO meeting and go, okay, now I know everything you guys know, right? That's not going to happen, right? Don't expect to listen to one webinar and absorb it all, but really start along that journey of every day consuming a little bit of content, experimenting inside your organization, and then really enlisting your team. One of the things, I had a bit of a wake-up call, even for myself today. I had posted something on LinkedIn about we just got, a top 25 for professional development in the US for large companies. And I was putting up a post on that. And I was like, gosh, we have had just an amazing path of success with people who started as dental assistants, now running $300 million or more businesses for us. We've got, people who started as associate dentists who are, our chief dental officer, and story after story where, people come from the chair to leading, big books of business, right? Dental assistants running $150 million businesses for us, right? And so, don't be shy about going to your own team, is my point, and having this dialogue and developing together. And just because you're the leader or the dentist doesn't mean you can't enlist your team in having these conversations and in being on that growth path together. And that can include all of you watching a webinar and coming back the next day and, hey, what did we learn? Let's talk about it, right? Anything here we want to implement? Could be none, could be a couple things. And then just growing on that path as a team, I think, is a huge opportunity. So what I hope, to wrap that all up, is we can widen the tent at ADSO to get folks in and exposed to this kind of content. They then carry it back to their teams and work with it, and then feed it back to us also, because, it's dentistry is no different than anything else. The great path of innovation is coming at the very small local level. And so we want to get better also by learning from folks. So I think that's a virtuous circle in and of itself.
And I love the fact, you're right. I agree with Emmett, and I'm going to talk to him next week about, the vision and where ADSO is going. But I do completely agree that because what we've done with technology and Zoom calls, webinars like these, I think we can make a much bigger impact on this profession using these viral technologies of today. And get everybody in the tent, so that at the end of the day, we want to provide smiles for everybody. We want to bring in all the people that have never seen a dentist, which is 50–60% of America, in the tent, so that we can change their lives. And so why not work collectively together in building better business models, having better conversations, providing better leadership to each other, so that we can really make this into a $500 billion pie than the $100 billion pie that it is today.
And you and I talk about this, you know, periodically, and I think it's so hard to get this message through to our sector and to organized dentistry. It's like, oh, DSOs, they're coming to take me away. You know, it's like, no, I'm one of the executives who started the DSO sector, right? I know it well. We have a very large DSO. We are looking to work with the sector to grow the pie. 60%, I got into this space 20 some odd years ago because 50% of the country wasn't seeing the dentist regularly. Right. Now it's 60% not seeing the dentist. We're going the wrong way still. The pandemic did create an opportunity, and I've seen it. We did elevate our status as healthcare providers, as essential healthcare providers. Now we need to run to daylight with this, and it needs to be all of us running to daylight. We need to all pound the stone on that message. We are essential. We're keeping people out of the ER. We're improving lives. We're improving oral health. Let's make no mistake, the fastest growing cancer in the country is oral cancer, right? It's only gonna get faster because of the HPV virus. So let's be the front line on that. Let's be the front line on a whole bunch of healthcare issues. We do that by widening the pie. We do that by getting more people into care. We can only do that together. There's nothing about the DSO space that has a delivery mechanism to say, suddenly we're going to fight with you for your patients, and we want to, you know, again, fight for the pie that exists. We want to widen it together, and so we want to get this tent more open, get people in, raise awareness of overall oral health care and the importance of it, and make it bigger and better for everyone. There's not enough dentists to deliver care to 100% of the population, and they should all have it. So efficiency models, learning from each other, that means the supply of dentists we have can treat more people. That's where our passion is, but we also have to raise awareness in the public's eye of how important dentistry is, and that's not by fighting over who gets what, it's by working together to expand it. So if I had a message I really want to get through to the sector, and it's just so hard to get through, and it's harder because our society is moving towards a scarcity society, criticize everything, right? You know, we could be a beacon of light as a profession because we haven't been that way historically. If we could turn that corner and really, really work together to expand the pie, that's what I'd love to see our sector do. That's what every time I get a chance to talk about it, you know, I'm always on that subject. Let's work together, expand the pie. So I say that to private practice dentists, say that to small DSOs, say it to large DSOs. We'll get our share. I'm not worried about it, but let's expand the pie together. Let's keep working. And I will tell you, if I was concerned about taking from and not expanding the pie, I promise you, you wouldn't see me on social media. You wouldn't see me doing webinars. I'd be behind the scenes growing the business. I wouldn't be out there, right? So I promise you, that's the only reason I'm out there, is try to keep expanding the pie for the sector. That's what's important to me.
I think if we have that big picture in mind, the solutions can be amazing, right? I mean, we can learn a lot from independent dentists. They have some amazing business models that they have developed at smaller offices that the big guys can learn from. Yeah. And the big guys obviously can teach the little guys as well. But I think if we can make this into a collaborative, a bigger discussion, and have an organization that can drive that change and be more inclusive and bring more patients in, I think we're all happier, and we're making the society happier as well by giving the treatment that people deserve to change their lives. Steve Bilt, I could talk to you for days about this stuff, but you've given me a lot of time. I know these are tough times, and we've almost spent an hour talking about these things. I appreciate you coming on our podcast, our webinar, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you sometime, maybe not this year. Yeah. I don't know where that situation is, but hopefully we'll be back. But I think we're gonna go stronger. I'm excited about where our industry is going, and I'm happy to look up to somebody that I know closely, which is very nice to have inspiration right in your pocketbook, inspiration that you can just text. I'm like, what do you think about this, Steve? It's very nice.
I'm happy to receive them.
I appreciate
this has been great. Yeah, and Amol, I thank you for what you're doing for the sector, you know, with these kind of conversations. And, you know, look, your product lowers barriers to entry to care very, very much so. And that's what we need, right? We have to make it highly accessible, easy to do business with, and things like what your product does do the same thing. And so that's a big part of it too, is we need tools to make it easier for people to engage with the dentist, make it, as convenient as possible, especially in this day and age. So, that's been long overdue also. So, all of us together with these approaches we can make a dent in this universe, and that's what it's about. So we got a chance to do it, and I think we're on our way. And I do think the COVID crisis is an accelerator towards that. I really do. And so that's what I want us to, as a sector, to really lean in on.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I look forward to having more conversations as we move along. Maybe we'll do something in the winter to see where the state of the industry is.
Yes.
But thank you again, Steve Bilt. It's been an honor.
Perfect. Thank you, Amol. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next one. Thank you.